Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to Selkie's fourth supply chain webinar in the series. This time we're exploring skills for the marine energy sector. Please sign up to the Selkie newsletter for all information on future events. A link will be provided in the follow-up email to today's webinar. Today's webinar will also be recorded for future viewing. So firstly, allow me to introduce myself as chair. My name is Sheppard. I'm the Marine Energy Wales project manager, part of the Marine Energy Wales team that is supporting and delivering the Selkie project. MEW is the industry-led stakeholder group representing the wave, tidal and floating offshore wind industries in Wales. MEW brings together over 60 member organisations, including technology developers, test centres, wider sectoral alliances such as the Celtic Sea Alliance, the supply chain, academia and the public sector to establish Wales as a global leader in sustainable marine energy generation. Our vision is to create a thriving and diverse marine energy industry in Wales, creating economic opportunity while working towards net zero. We're delighted to be part of Selkie, which is an Island Wales collaborative project which brings together industry and academia to boost the marine energy industry. We're leading on the communications and dissemination aspects of the project and supporting Menter on business engagement and knowledge transfer from the universities to the sector. Other partners involved in the project include University College Cork, Swansea University, DP Energy and Gavin and Doherty Geosolutions. So the marine renewable energy sector is developing at an increased pace in Wales and Ireland. To ensure that the economic benefits of these projects remain local, the need to develop a skilled workforce in coastal communities is more important than ever. In this webinar today, we're bringing together representatives from a range of key organisations to explore the skills needs and requirements of the industry, the skills shortages and challenges for progress, and will signpost the education and support opportunities available. For those in our audience unfamiliar with the marine energy sector, the future developments associated with decarbonising our society to produce clean energy are expected to create a diverse range of career opportunities. These include the likes of construction and fabrication, operations and maintenance, designers, environmental and IT specialists, business development and commercial managers, and project service teams. So before I introduce our panel, I'm just going to go over some quick rules to make sure everything runs nice and smoothly for today's event. All attendees are starting on mute with no video to ensure everybody can hear the panelists clearly. If you need any assistance at any point, please click the raise hand button or send a message via the chat. You'll be able to see each of our panelists who we welcome here today. They will be sharing their screens and showing you a presentation of their projects. So we'll be holding a Q&A at the end of the session, but feel free to send these in as they come to you. You can submit questions via the Q&A icon at the bottom bar. And then please only use the chat for technical assistance. So the webinar will be recorded and we will be sharing it following. So first, I'm going to hand over to Sophie Crouch from Menter, who's been helping on the Selkie project. She's just going to give a brief introduction to what is the Selkie project and how it can help businesses.
Thanks, Jay. I'll just get my screen up. There we go. All right. So thanks to everyone for attending today. This is one of our most popular events so far, which is really encouraging. So thanks for joining. Today's webinar, as Jay said, is hosted by the Selkie project. And for those of you who haven't heard of us or are not exactly sure what we do, I'm just going to give a very quick introduction this morning. So my name's Sophie and I'm a project coordinator on the project. So Selkie is a cross-border project between Wales and Ireland, bringing together leading researchers and businesses in the marine energy industry. As you can see on the screen, the project is led by 6 partner organisations with an overall aim to streamline the pathway towards commercialisation for the marine energy sector. As part of the project's activity, Selkie aims to support the industry by developing a set of multi-use technology tools and improving services that will assist developers and supply chain companies to ultimately progress further towards commercialisation. So these tools that you can see on screen now range from the design of foundations and mooring systems to GIS tools for wave and tidal sites across Wales and Ireland. As part of the project, the tools will be trialled on wave and tidal devices to test their reliability, survivability and commercial potential. Alongside the development of these tools, we are engaging with businesses in the industry, providing knowledge transfer and ultimately building a network of companies across Wales and Ireland that are working in the sector. So if you're joining us today and your business is working in the industry or even thinking of diversifying into marine energy, We'd really like to encourage you to take the opportunity to join a growing number of businesses that are receiving support and being connected within the sector. Not only is it a great way to learn about the industry and gain knowledge and support from leading experts, but it's also a fantastic opportunity to build contacts in a rapidly growing sector. Joining the network is completely free, and your business can receive a range of support, including full training in the tools that I mentioned, input into the development of new products for the sector. We can also assist with data analysis and modelling work. And finally, we can offer individual tailored business support and networking opportunities. So on screen, you can see just some of the businesses that are already part of the Selkie network. As you can see, just at a glance, there's a broad range of companies involved, and we really do encourage everyone to get involved, whether you're a developer or a fabricator, all the way through to maybe marketing or graphic design. It's likely that your services are really valuable to the sector. So yeah, do get involved. If you would like to be a part of the network and get your company's name and services out there in the industry, please do get in contact. My email's on the screen now, so if you'd like to hear more, just get in touch. I'll also send out some information in the next few days on how to sign up, so do keep an eye out for that. But for now, that was a very quick introduction on Selkie. I'll hand back to Jay to continue with the webinar and introduce today's speakers. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone enjoys the session.
Thank you for that, Sophie. It's great to see the number of companies involved grow every time that presentation's given at the beginning. So next we're going to hand over to Karen, who's going to do an introduction and some scene setting about skills in the marine renewable industry. Karen is from Menter, the company behind the Morlais project. I think you're on mute, Karen. Can't hear you. Karen? We think you're on mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Let me start again. I was just in the process of saying Bore da, good morning to you all from a very blustery northwest Wales. And it gives me pleasure to introduce to you Morlais. I just need to go back to one slide if I can organise this. No, it doesn't seem to be playing. I'm just going to stop sharing and going back into this again with your permission. I'm sorry for the delay on this.
No worries.
Hang on. Here we go. Oh, are you able to see the screen at the moment?
No, I can't see anything at the moment.
Okay, let's go again. Sorry about this. Okay. Okay, I can't seem to see it up here at the moment. Sophie, are you able to help me out here and just get a screen share for me? Oh dear.
Yeah, I'll just get it up now, Karen.
Thank you very much. I will continue though by just saying the project that we've been involved in for the past 6 years is called Morlais, and translated that means voice of the sea. And thanks to Sophie, I think we're going to now see an image of South Stack, and this overlooks the Irish Sea. This is one of the 3 tidal stream zones in the UK that was designated by the Crown Estate. This was back in 2014, and Menter, our parent company, was successful in the tender. And one of the reasons being is that Menter is responsible, and its sole objective is to get involved in the socio-economic development of the region. And obviously this ties into skills and education. And we have a record of delivery over the past 20 years of working with local partners to identify need and source funding specifically in education, training and skills. But the zone itself is 35 square kilometres of seabed, and that is approximately 5,000 football pitches. I had to translate that to visualise it. We've got 45-year lease, so we've got a very long revenue perspective, and hence our focus really on the skills and training requirements, because this 45-year lease also has the option to extend. It's potentially the world's largest tidal stream program with 240 megawatt capacity. We've got a very strong tidal resource. We're very fortunate to have a future-proof grid potential. Obviously, there are strong tidal resources throughout the world, but where we are in Northwest Wales is 4 kilometres from the tidal resource back to the national grid. And that is why I think the developer community have been particularly interested in our geographic location and the capabilities of the site. Over the past 6 years, we've identified 10 world-leading tidal development companies that have already signed up to deploy within the region, within our zone, and the deployment will start in 2025. If I could have the next slide, Sophie. Thank you. Our first phase is the consenting. This is essentially the marine license and the land-based planning. Our objective is to provide the world's first plug and play tidal stream project, which will be agnostic. So we'll be able to deploy all the technologies out there, and they will plug into a central manifold that will be just off the coast. And from there, Menter, and Morlais are responsible for putting in the infrastructure, which is the cabling across the island, which will be all underground and not visible, and a connection back into the national grid. So what you see here on the left of the island are the berths that we've allocated to different developers that sit within our development community. So essentially, Menter, and Morlais, we are sea lords, and we will be renting out, for want of a better word, areas of the seabed and providing the infrastructure and support. And we'll come back to the support in terms of skills and training. So if I could have the next slide, please. This is a list of some of the developer community that we've been involved in. We've got a very good relationship with them, and they've been particularly good at sharing information with us. And I see this as key to the future development and understanding of one of our major roles, and that is to work on the socioeconomic aspects. So each one of these developers will be deploying in a zone in 2025 and working with us collectively. So we're very much an enabler in all of this to bring a new industry to our region. We're a small coastal community, relatively high unemployment, but we're very blessed to have a really good skills infrastructure. We've got a local university, and also the nuclear capabilities that we have on the island based up on the north, I think has been pulling through some good broad-based STEM and engineering skills and heavy manufacturing, which we hope that will be transferable into the new marine energy industry. If I could have the next slide, please. In terms of financing, we've been successful in sourcing ERDF funding, which is the European funding. The match funding for this we predict it's going to come through the North Wales Growth Deal. That was a UK initiative which is now being managed by local authority. And for the North Wales Growth Deal, again, the focus is on skills and training and employment. So there will be a requirement for us as a company to deliver in this area. So the next slide, please. I'm not going to dwell on the timescales, but just to say, it's been a very long process. We've been working at this for 6 years to get the consent, and the next phase we're now going into is the infrastructure build out. I think it's important to say that we are putting contractual obligations into our tender documents, and these will be weighted in terms of local content, working with apprenticeships, employing, and also employing local people. So this is really, it's not a nice to have for us. We're really focusing on the skills and training elements. And we've been doing this for some time now, and we're making it as part of our contractual obligation to deliver. So if I could have the next slide, please. So why is this important? It says right at the very bottom, job creation, skills training, skills transfer, and supply chain, O&M and international standards. I think that's very much at the top of our agenda. We've had very early engagements with our developer community, and also, as I mentioned before, through Menter, we have already established relationships with schools, universities, colleges, and also apprenticeship training skills courses. And we've worked to gain an early understanding of the supply chain requirements, but also the skills and training. We've been working collaboratively with Bangor University and Dr. Edward Jones, who has an expertise in the field of socioeconomic development. We've issued a questionnaire to all our developers to rate the deployment. That was important for us to understand when our deployers would be going in the water, and also to estimate and map the skills to essentially bridge the skills gap or identify one if there was one. And we needed to dovetail the requirements of the developers with our local providers. From the questionnaire, we've established that 50% of the local supply chain, will be delivered locally. By 2036, we will have created between 90 and 100 jobs. There'll be a direct investment of 36 million by 2036. So we've been engaging with primary, secondary schools, taking it out to the market. I think there's been, because of the movement within the nuclear industry, there were high expectations that there would be jobs coming through for the local communities. And it really is a vital, important part of the giving young people the choice whether they stay in their local communities or whether they leave. And I think it's been really encouraging and very well received that Wales has the potential of this new industry. And I think you can see that from the feedback that we've been getting from local schools, universities, that these young people are able to make choices and be able to possibly frame their future depending what's coming through in the local skills market. We're blessed that Bangor University has a very good ocean sciences and environmental sciences department. We've also had several Meet the Buyer events. 160 were in attendance during our first meeting. Again, I mentioned the skills capabilities that we have from the nuclear industry, and the companies that we've engaged with are very keen to have an understanding very early on of what the requirements are, so that they can start now transferring their skills, starting to understand the requirements and gear up now for the future of this very exciting and vibrant market. So there are, as I mentioned, contractual obligations, and we will tender and make sure that the skills training is dovetailed into the requirements and create that match. It won't be completely altruistic, I think, for the developers to get involved early. That we are pushing at an open door. They're very keen to engage with us, and make sure that they are delivering and working in the local communities. So I think that as Morlais' role as a facilitator is going to be a very exciting and vibrant one. And we're delighted to have an opportunity to not only be here today, but also be a long-term partner and facilitator in, as I mentioned earlier, giving our young people and people right across the region new opportunities and employment. So thank you very much for that opportunity to talk to you today, and I look forward to taking any questions if there are any during the question and answer session.
Thank you for your presentation, Karen. Yeah, and we look forward to seeing how the project develops and how we bring opportunities to young people in the area around Anglesey as Morlais moves further into operation. So next we have a speaker from RWE, that's Helen Thomas, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned from the offshore wind sector and how this can be potentially more broadly applicable to marine renewable energy.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, and can you see my slides?
It's still loading for me at the moment.
Let me know hopefully when it comes up.
Yeah, it says you started sharing, but we're still waiting for it to load.
Okay. Hopefully it will do so soon, otherwise maybe you might want to load the slides from your side.
Yeah, I'm just opening them up now anyway. Yeah.
Is it sharing yet, or?
No, I'll share them if you don't mind stopping. I'll share them from my end for you.
Okay. Second presentation in a row with technical issues. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks very much. No. Okay. Yeah, I might not say please after every, I'll just say next slide, if that's all right. Hi everyone, I'm Helen K Thomas from RWE Renewables. I'm a stakeholder and supply chain manager, and in the sort of context of Wales, I work on one of our projects, which is an extension to the Gwyntamore wind farm off the coast of North Wales. So I can tell you a bit about that briefly. Next slide. So, and you might want to click it again. I think there's another little box that comes up. Thanks. So just very briefly, you may have previously known us as Energy. We became RWE Renewables in July last year. And essentially, we've always had a long historic presence in Wales. We have the existing wind farms there. I mentioned Gwyntamore, Real Flats and North Hoyle. You can see Gwyntamore is the largest of those at 576. Opportunities for growth in Wales specifically, as I mentioned, Owlermore, which is at least another 576, but possibly more than that. We're looking into green hydrogen, floating wind, and other opportunities in the Celtic Sea. Next slide. So just very briefly to introduce the Owlermore site, you can see the Gwyntamore wind farm there kind of in two sections in purple, and then the red area is the area currently being assessed for the Owlermore project, so the Gwyntamore extension. So yeah, sizable project, as I said, at least 576 megawatts. I think it's safe to say that offshore wind is big right now. Part of the reason why I'm talking about it is, of course, because that's what we do, but I hope that there will be some sort of insights and lessons for other marine technologies as well. And I think we'd also like to see offshore wind, given that it is so big and has a big opportunity. I'm talking about fixed offshore wind here more specifically, included in the marine energy packages. More generally, we think there's obviously a big opportunity for Wales going forward. Next slide. Also, just to briefly introduce Drygmore, which is a floating offshore wind opportunity that we are looking into off the coast of Anglesey. So yeah, our focus has very much been North Wales, but yeah, as I say, I think there's lessons learned and collaboration right across Wales, Ireland, the UK is very important, particularly when we're discussing skills. Next slide, please. So I just want to whiz through some slides that sort of have a top 10 tips for skills development. As I said, talking from an offshore wind perspective, but I hope it gives in relation to the agenda, you know, sort of the education opportunities, and as well as touching on some of the industry needs. So I'll cover those now. Next slide, please. So the first one is, don't underestimate the variety of roles available. Obviously that applies to offshore wind, but a range of other marine technologies, there are certainly more than you think. Next slide. I'll whiz through some of these. This is taken from a sort of teachers training pack that we've at RWE we've sort of put together for one of our projects called Triton Knoll, but it's applicable across the piece, and I think it's really nice way of showing the types of roles that are available. You could flick on to the next slide as well, Jay. So, you know, there are a wide range of roles, and it's not always the hard hats, the ones that you necessarily expect, although those are very exciting. Next slide. There are a whole range of other roles, whether that's in relation to consents. You can see I've got a range of consents topics there, whether we're talking about assessing offshore ornithology and ecology, or shipping and navigation. My particular role, which is very much to do with stakeholder management. You know, there's civil aviation and how you manage planes around wind farms, commercial fisheries, you know, health and safety, procurement, HR. There are a whole range of opportunities, and I'm sure, you know, across the marine sectors that, you know, you have those as well, and it's really important that we highlight to young people the range of jobs that are available. Next slide, please. You can also, apologies, this is a bit small, I will share the slide pack afterwards, and I know we're being recorded, but the point here is that you can also look at it from a component perspective, so getting into the minds of children of, you know, the components that are needed for a project, in this case a wind farm, offshore wind farm, and highlight the jobs and roles around those too. So that's quite a nice schematic. Next slide, please. I think the second is, you know, something we're all probably aware of, but it's important to re-emphasize it. Spark interest at an early age. When we're trying to create that pipeline of future skills, skilled workers that we need, it's really important to get in at the sort of primary school age, support schools initiatives, create, you know, STEM programs and STEM thinking for the younger ages. I mentioned teaching packs. I think we need more of those as marine industries overall. Think outside the box, talk about climate change and energy, and sort of create that passion and excitement. I think that's really important. Next slide. 3, develop a future pipeline of skilled and diverse and sustainable workers. So that's linked to the previous slide, but I think going forward from this, you know, apprenticeship schemes, creating centres of excellence, making sure that we are showcasing the amazing resource that, you know, both Wales, Ireland and the UK as a whole has, talking about those, putting them at the forefront of young minds and creating that passion. Working with industry more. Industry has a really important role to play, and we're often really keen to get involved and do this, so utilise us. PhDs, you know, Bangor University has already been mentioned. We've at RWE, we've got currently funding a PhD there, and I think there's more opportunities to get involved at the sort of later education end of the scale as well. Carry out strengths and gaps analysis of your particular region, understand the potential and quantify the opportunity, and then grow it. And also ensure that skills are transferable. I think something that we've learned from the offshore wind industry is that you have to be realistic, that projects are often on a sort of peaks and troughs basis. You know, they're not necessarily consistent, the opportunities throughout. So having skills that are transferable across different marine technologies or other sectors is really important. And of course, the diversity piece, we've set in the offshore wind sector deal a target of reaching 33%, up from 16 currently by the year 2030. So I think new industries coming up just do that from the get-go, make sure it's diverse, because we know there's strength in diversity. Next slide, please. Also wanted to mention that we have a really beneficial relationship with College Llandrillo in North Wales. We have set up an apprenticeship training scheme there. We've trained up over almost 40 now. apprentices, and last year we made it our national training hub, which means we don't only train up apprentices to work on the wind farms in North Wales, we send them all over the UK, and I think that's really important to recognise that not only fixed offshore wind but floating and other technologies, yes, you want to focus on the local opportunities, but these are global industries, right, and you want people to get excited and send them all over. We're also supporting a brand new engineering centre, the development of a brand new engineering centre there. So yeah, just highlights some of the positive ways that industry can work in the skills arena. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned or alluded to, yes, of course you want to focus on your patch and your local region, and that's quite right. But don't forget that these industries are big and you need to think beyond the local region, and you want to be able to send your skilled workers anywhere. There's a lot of opportunity, particularly in offshore wind, as I'm focused on here in the region of the Irish Sea. There's 12 offshore wind farms already. That's a third almost of current UK offshore wind capacity, so it's not to be overlooked. So we've got the sort of existing wind farm opportunities, then you've got upcoming opportunities like the extension project I've already mentioned, and you'll all be aware of the recent round 4 announcement that the Crown's estate made, where again the Irish Sea, there's a lot more offshore wind to come. And also obviously in floating wind, as I said, we're looking into floating wind, and I think we really see Wales particularly as a region really being the springboard for that, again, to make floating wind grow, and Scotland are doing similar. But yeah, there's a lots of skills and supply chain opportunity upcoming, so I think it's taking those lessons learned from offshore wind to floating wind, and then also to other marine technologies as well. Next slide, please. So focus on the here and now. As I said, that map shows the sort of Crown Estate announcement of the future round 4 projects, leasing projects that I've mentioned. Don't overlook the opportunities in fixed offshore wind and get behind or get left behind. But also I've mentioned already, you know, that they are global markets, so there's opportunities here and now beyond the current sort of regions as well, the local regions, and huge export opportunities, not forgetting that skilled people can work anywhere, as I've mentioned. Next slide, please. Plan for the beyond. I've talked about Dragamore, the floating offshore wind project that we're looking at, and hopefully in the spirit of sort of collaboration and highlighting the skills agenda here, you know, there's other great projects like Blue Gem. We've already heard from Morlais in floating wind and tidal technologies and marine, and also recognising not only offshore wind but other technologies as a facilitator for future technologies that come along, so green hydrogen and others. So creating a really exciting skills arena and opportunities here. Next slide, please. Collaborate to compete and utilise supply chain clusters. Joe, if you could click the button again, please. Thank you. So as I said, it's really important, and I think I've been involved in setting up something called a supply chain cluster in the North Wales and North West region. That didn't exist before. It basically looks after the businesses in the local region and skills, and flies the flag for those. It's called the Offshore Energy Alliance. You can look us up on LinkedIn. But the point here is that in order to set up that cluster, we collaborated with all the other clusters. You can see the dots on that map around the country to learn lessons from what they had done well in terms of looking after their supply chain and skills, and then we took those lessons. So I think, you know, you can collaborate to compete. Definitely, it should definitely be the motto going forward. Next slide, please. This just kind of shows the Offshore Energy Alliance structure. It's cross-sectoral and cross-regional, so it's born out of offshore wind, but it's by no means only offshore wind focus. And we've got North Wales, Merseyside and Cumbria all involved. So I guess just highlighting the point again that, you know, you can collaborate for the benefit of skills and supply chain. Next slide, please. We can skip that one. So 8 and 9, learn and work with other industries. Again, some tips I'd pass on is that offshore wind, we've definitely learned a lot from oil and gas. There's a lot of transferable skills and knowledge there. Nuclear industry, also lots to learn, and we can work together. utilise trade bodies across the board as well, whether that's from oil and gas and other technologies, but also the renewables industry has its own trade bodies that are worth using, and they can also push the skills agenda and get the message out for your industry as well. And as I've said, other countries and across regions, and also recognise that skills and supply chain really do go hand in hand and are the key to unlocking UK green job growth. So it's really important that we recognise that going forward. And finally, keep up with and shape policy objectives. So you know, as I said, in the context of offshore wind, it's big, it's happening here and now. Be ready to extract the current opportunities, whilst of course looking forward and focusing on exciting other marine technologies that are coming up as well. But I think it's really important to understand and pass on in terms of skills, you know, the exciting policy environment that we're working within, what might be needed. There's jobs in policy, lots of jobs around in policy context as well, and also just a really big focus at the moment on you know, the sector deal commitments, increasing UK supply chain content, and of course we need the skills to come through for that. And a real key one that I think Wales and other countries are capitalising on is developing manufacturing bases, create jobs. That obviously creates skills, or the other way around, and just gets that flowing. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for the future of offshore wind and other marine technologies. So making sure that we try and keep the manufacturing bases locally will create the skills and the jobs in itself. And I hope that wasn't too long, but that was everything I had to share really. So hopefully there's some useful, valuable lessons to transfer across the board there.
Thank you very much for that, Helen. It's good to kind of hear the lessons from a more established industry. So before we go to our developers, we're going to go to Pembrokeshire College next, who are going to kind of share some insight into what they're doing to provide skills to young people to one day work in the marine renewable energy industry. So Arwyn and Hayley, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Arwyn, I think he's here with us too, somewhere.
Yeah. I'm just going to pull up the presentation for you now.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Great. Ready when you are.
Over to you, Arwyn.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Arwyn Williams. I'm Head of Faculty for Engineering, Construction and Higher Education at Pembrokeshire College. And yeah, we're here to talk to you this morning about what we do and what we're trying to do and developing for the marine energy sector. Hayley?
Yes, my name is Hayley Williams. I work in curriculum development at the college, and currently working very closely with the engineering department, looking specifically at this exciting renewable marine energy sector.
Okay, so Hayley and I are going to share this presentation. We're based obviously in Pembrokeshire, which is southwest Wales. We're a college on the peninsula, so our college generally needs to provide a wide range of qualifications and training for the whole community and the region. And as the slide says, we educate over 13,000 learners. That includes our work-based learning contract. We are, I believe, the largest apprenticeship contract holder in Wales, and we work with several college providers across the whole of South Wales delivering apprenticeships. We do have a very strong history and heritage in sort of the engineering sector. And we also obviously work with a wide range of employees, many of which in this region are small and medium-sized enterprises. We pride ourselves in obviously having excellent quality outcomes including a growth having A-level dependent. We do teach in solutional qualifications. Okay, next slide, please. Many which in this region we pride ourselves in.
Okay, so as a college.
Okay, so over to.
Thank you. I don't think the line's very good, Arwyn. As a college, we engage with most schools, I would say, in Pembrokeshire, mainly from year 8 to year 11. We do hold a very large careers event called Choices. We haven't had it, of course, this year because of COVID. This event is sort of designed to help year 9 pupils with their GCSE options. So we tend to ship in well over 1,000 young people. It's a crazy day with us at college, and they pre-choose 3 to 4 different tasters from around 70 different career activities, engineering playing a big role in their selection. Of course, engineering is still popular with the young fellas, but again, we are still struggling to attract females to engineering courses at college. We also run GCSE equivalent programs for schools. We're currently working with Greenhill and a school Harry Tudor. Students are coming into college for 1 day a week for a practical and theory in engineering, and complete then with a 2 GCSE equivalent certificate. So this is a great way of exposing young people to future careers in engineering. Just before our first lockdown, March last year, we worked collaboratively with Milford Haven Port Authority, Catapult, Bombora, Pembrokeshire Coastal Forum, Mainstay Marine and Swansea University to create an event to raise awareness of tomorrow's renewable energy opportunities in PEMS. We all organised a carousel of tasters that brought excitement around this renewable development in the area. The event took place at the Technium Centre in Pembroke and was attended by between 90 and 100 students from Pembroke and Milford schools, and of course our college engineering students. We were hoping to build on this, but again, because of COVID, everything's been put on hold. There is a link there to the event. I don't know whether Jay can double click on that. I don't know whether, is it working, Jay? Maybe it's not working.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so I take it the video is not working, which is a shame. We have the lovely Charlotte from Mainstay featured in it. So I'll move on. So this is just an example of the leaflet that Milford Haven Port Authority kindly put together on behalf of the event. And like RWE, we focused on careers, and careers, not just the obvious ones that we all know about, but careers in business development, design and other areas. As you can see, it looks quite childlike compared to Helen's, but again, this was focused at talking to the younger groups within the school, So that's just an example. Next slide, please. This is for you, Arwyn.
Thank you, Hayley. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm in a noisy workshop this morning, so it may not be as ideal as that. Yeah, we've got, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, a well-established engineering department. which has been serving Pembrokeshire, but also sort of significant part of the oil and gas industry over the years. The sort of our provision really goes all the way from level 1 right up to level 2, 3, and then into higher education, HNCs, and some HNDs. We've got about 600 engineering learners with us every year in the college, and we cover a wide variety of topics. And as you can see on the screen there, you know, it sort of covers most of the areas that you'd expect. I think the key feedback that we've been getting is that the topics and the subjects and the skills that we've been doing so far for the oil and gas industry do map across quite well and prepare learners quite well for any of the other sort of sectors in the energy sector. So we're fairly confident that that sort of foundation will work well for any floating wind or any sort of other technologies that come along. I think, you know, it's important for us to try and provide as wide a range of qualifications in Pembrokeshire as we can, to try and give the people of Pembrokeshire and the young people of Pembrokeshire the opportunities to gain employment in these new fields. And we're working with a range of other providers and sort of colleges, as well as online providers, to try and come up with a catalogue of all the qualifications that we would imagine they would need. You know, the region needs to be able to provide all the training that is required. If I could have the next slide then, please.
Okay, so you know, there are quite a few specialist areas within the sector that we needed to focus on. And at the end of the day, we are a small college, although we do have a lot of specialisms in oil and gas, which of course are transferable. But we felt that there was a need to reach out to the specialists. So we started talking to the Viking Group, which is a maritime services company that were established back in, I believe, 1988. Now, they have 3 facets to their business, one being Viking recruitment. So they recruit from the boiler room, if you like, to deck. The Chiltern Academy, where they have maritime cadetships. I think it was in 2019, they actually recruited 10% of their intake from Pembrokeshire College, which was such a success for them and a huge success for us. And then the third facet is the MSA, which is the Maritime Skills Academy. As you can see, these are the type of qualifications that we will be able to deliver in partnership with Viking, and the delivery at the moment would be a combination of virtual at Pembrokeshire College, and for some of the specialist areas it will have to be delivered at the moment at Dover. So we've got the GWO, the Global Wind Organisation, accredited suite of courses, which for the industry we're looking at working at heights and manual handling. Then we've got the STCW, again, 50, maybe 60% of that can be delivered in Pembrokeshire. It's quite a difficult suite of courses to actually get off the ground, because of course you've got the water and the fire safety aspect of this particular suite. So we are talking to Pembrokeshire County Council and the fire service so that we can in the future deliver the full package. But right now it would be a blend of. Then we've got high voltage as well. Again, this would be the Viking Group specialism here, first aid, and then the AEC, which we can deliver as well at Pembrokeshire College, general care and maintenance, as it says there, of engines. This is a mandatory qualification now. So if you are a boat or a vessel holder, whatever you call it, then regardless of your size, you will need to have this ticket. So next slide, please. So in terms of, you know, new curriculum development, I think Arwyn was going to touch on the new BTEC programme. Arwyn?
Yeah, so we're working with careers colleges to develop level level 2 and level 3 diploma in port logistics. So this we feel would work with all the different sort of incentives and initiatives that are out at the moment, and really would give local companies and sort of local people the skills needed to help manage the logistics involved in whether we for a free port or to deal with the sort of logistical side of bringing various elements to Pembrokeshire. So we felt that there was a bit of a gap in our provision there, and that's something that we're working to towards a September 22 entry, and this would be aimed at probably 16 to 19 learners to give them an introduction to that sort of sector. Hayley,
okay,
can I pass on to you next?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk. Can you just go back to that slide? Thank you. There's been a lot of talk this morning around supply chain and supply chain operations and management. And because of the rise of virtual learning, we are now able as a college to reach further afield for specialisms for the sector. And we're currently investigating new curriculum with the Institute of Supply Chain Management. They're an international organisation with a very good reputation. All their qualifications are regulated by Ofqual, and they work closely with the National Occupation Standards. So there are, I mean, their courses are quite exciting, to be honest, but there's so much to choose from. We've decided to narrow it down to 3 areas, which are the supply chain and operations, manufacturing planning and control, and ports and shipping. In particular, the manufacturing planning and control is possibly where we're going to focus upon at level 5, 6 and 7. So these would be more higher qualifications for those already working in the sector. And this again would be a blended delivery, so a bit of virtual, a bit of at Pembrokeshire College, maybe in the workplace. And what's nice about the qualification, it's got a foundation of core units with optional units, so you can build your own qualification. So some of those units include things like international freight, ports and shipping, logistics, procurement. So hopefully, you know, with talking to you guys, we will be able to at least develop something that, you know, meets your requirements right now and possibly in the future. But again, you know, it would be your feedback that would be vital to this curriculum development. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think I'd just like to finish by saying, you know, we certainly feel that Pembrokeshire College hasn't got the answer for everything, or all the needs of training and education in the region, and we're working with as many partners as we can to provide that the sort of well-rounded catalogue. So, you know, we are seeking any partners or anybody wanting to support us in that. We'd be very grateful, because this needs to be a sort of a region approach. And, you know, we've got the RLSP as well with the Swansea Bay City deal, looking at how we can sort of provide that. So, you know, the more we work with, the better, really. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you both. Sorry for the issues with the video there. It's a great video showcasing what you're doing, so I'll make sure that we get a link in the chat for our attendees to watch after the webinar. So now we're going to move on to an industry perspective, talking about the needs of the industry. We have Dave from Bombora, who are one of Wales's leading wave energy developers. You ready to take the floor, Dave?
Yes, I am. I'll just bring up the correct presentation. Okay, Jay, just let me know that
yeah, I can see that
presentation.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, hello everyone. My name's Dave Rigg, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Bombora. Right, Bombora is a technology company, really, but we are dedicated to creating electricity from Wavepower. So we moved to Pembrokeshire in 2017, relocated from Western Australia, and we moved their headquarters and most of our staff at the time to Pembrokeshire, and then began recruiting. And within about 12 months, we acquired most of the staff that we needed, although we've been adding to it gradually ever since. We're now 27 people. Most of our staff are engineers, and about half of the team have been recruited locally. But there are benefits to bringing in professionals from outside of Pembrokeshire as well. I don't think our supply chain would have been too happy if we'd have cannibalized their workforce, and it does create a diverse and slightly more cosmopolitan workspace, which I think is appealing to most, and that tends to help with recruitment. Here on the left, you can see an artist's impression of one of our machines. So this is a seabed mounted machine. It's very modular. Each of these yellow and black structures are called cell modules. And they're effectively large foot pumps. And as the waves roll overhead, the pumps, the cell modules expand and contract, capturing the difference in hydrostatic pressure due to the waves. And they push air through a central ducting system, which turns a turbine, rotates a generator, and creates electricity. But because it is modular, we can take this technology and apply it to all sorts of other structures, including floating structures. And we're now working with Technip FMC, who are a large offshore construction company, working in the, sorry, I see my video's off. They tend to work in with oil and gas companies and offshore wind companies, conducting engineering and also offshore construction services. And we're working with these guys to develop a floating platform that would accommodate both wind and wave and enable us to harness more dynamic wave climates further offshore. And by combining the two technologies, we hope to be able to offer a lower overall cost of energy, which should help to accelerate the whole floating offshore wind market. So I'm going to focus mostly on the kind of skills and people that we require, and they're fairly typical of most kind of engineering companies, to be honest. So a little bit on the project in Pembrokeshire. So when we moved to Pembrokeshire in 2017, we embarked upon the design and build of our first full-scale machine. It's a very large machine. It's going to be 75 meters long, 20 meters wide, and will weigh 850 tons. On the left here, you can see the steel structures that form the cell modules. On this machine that we will deploy off the coast of Pembrokeshire later this year, there will be 4 of these cell modules. Now, most of the machine is steel, and the majority of the manufacturing has gone to the local supply chain in Pembrokeshire. We're very fortunate to be well serviced by quality manufacturing organisations such as Mainstay, who are here today. And this indeed is this picture has been taken within one of their workshops. So it's big, heavy infrastructure, and it requires some specialist equipment and people, of course. Our team are involved in the design, the build, and we will be leading the operation and maintenance of the machinery during the next phase, during the operational phase. So we require a wide range of engineering disciplines within our team, but we also lean heavily upon our supply chain. And we work alongside our supply chain to help them understand our requirements and deliver on our specifications. Clearly, there is not currently a supply chain that specializes in this kind of equipment, so we're all having to learn as we go, and in some ways that's what makes our projects so interesting. We're not following a template that someone has kind of thrashed out previously. We are solving problems every day and writing the design manual, the operation manual, the build manual for this new technology, and that's a great challenge for engineers, and that does help when it comes to recruitment. Project managers. Well, we have a few project managers within the team. But our project managers have to understand the engineering. They have to be able to listen to the various expert opinions around them and tread a course that weighs up all those opinions. And inevitably, when you get a bunch of experts in the room, they never agree. And so our project managers have to be able to make judgment calls and ultimately make decisions about the direction of these projects based on the various views and opinions they receive. So it's important that our project managers understand the engineering and have a fairly broad range of understanding, and that's difficult. It's often, you often find good engineers and you get good project managers, but finding a project manager that also understands the engineering is often challenging. And so what we have been doing is taking young engineers, identifying those that show management potential, and kind of finding a course that enables them to develop into a future project manager. So that might be giving them sort of mini projects to manage within larger projects. This image here is of our first membrane. It's as you can see, it's a fairly large component, 15 meters long, 6 meters wide. It's all rubber. It's 18 millimeters thick, weighing about 5 tons. And it will be this component that, despite its size and mass, will actually expand. It will stretch by up to 50% during operation in order to capture that wave energy and pump air through our machines. So one of the first things we have to do, though, when we receive those membranes is fit them to the cell module. And this contraption that you can see here is actually the system that we use for stretching that membrane into place and clamping it onto the steel structure that forms our cell module. This contraption that's on the base here, the unpainted steel, accommodates 40 different hydraulic rams. Each ram's pulling 8 tons. So you get an idea of the novelty of what we're doing, and there's risk as well. This is a serious operation and has not just required good engineering, but a lot of planning and liaison with our supply chain. Mainstay have been heavily involved in developing this equipment and the procedures that will go with it, and we're all looking forward to putting it into use very soon. So, outstanding engineers. Well, it goes without saying, when pioneering new technology, you need people that can think outside the box, that can apply engineering from its first principles, because often there's few precedent to go on, and that is indeed the case with what we do. So they've got to be able to take their excellent understanding of engineering principles, apply them to these new problems, and ultimately come up with solutions. But the great thing about what we do is that we do have the freedom to take our ideas and take them all the way from concept to delivery, which is a very satisfying way in which to work if you're an engineer. As I've said, we need to cover many different disciplines: marine, structural, mechanical, electrical, control. computing and materials. And it is a challenge to find engineers of this caliber. It's especially a challenge finding female engineers, and we've recently brought on a couple of graduates. They're actually still conducting their final year at university, and what we're doing with these engineers is we are employing them a couple of days a week during their final year, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to take them on full time. And but generally it is more difficult to find female engineers, and I guess it starts at school. You know, engineers need to have a very strong grasp of maths and sciences, and they need to be encouraged to see engineering as a dynamic, exciting career that is both well paid and well respected, but presents, you know, opportunities to solve problems that will ultimately benefit generations to come. I know when I was going through school and university, I visited a number of engineering organisations, did the milk round, was looking at, you know, what I might do in the future, and generally those organisations that I visited seemed a little bit dreary, a little bit old-fashioned, and not the kind of place I wanted to work in. And as a result, I initially didn't pursue an engineering career, and it only came to me later in life. Hopefully we don't come across as that kind of old-fashioned, stuffy organisation. In 2019, we ran an engineering challenge weekend, and we invited various teams from different universities across the country to come to Pembroke Dock and engage in a fun weekend of challenges. Some of them were related to the engineering that we do, but some of them were just more kind of general team building exercises. We were making use of the Cledo estuary, so we had some kayaking and some fun activities and a bit of a social afterwards. And actually one of those attendees now works for us. So we also get involved where we can in presentations to schools. We've worked with Pembrokeshire College on a couple of occasions to give those guys a flavour of what we do, and hopefully that will inspire youngsters to take a closer look at engineering and marine energy in particular. Electrical engineers are actually the most difficult of all engineers to find. So if you have any young aspiring engineers in your family, encourage them to go down the electrical route, because in the future these guys are going to be the ones that are probably the best paid, because there's no doubt there will be a high demand for them, and they certainly are in short supply, possibly because electrical engineering is probably the most academically difficult of all the engineering disciplines. And then in the workshop, we need excellent technicians. We need guys with and girls, sorry, with a really good eye for detail. People that take a real pride in their work, but also have an excellent understanding of the engineering behind their work. And our technicians, we do have a couple within the team, but mostly we lean upon the supply chain here. And the reason we like to have technicians in the team is because it enables us to be familiar with the way in which the challenges associated with building and maintaining our machinery. And by understanding that, we can feed that back into the design and make sure that the designs are both more manufacturable and easier and cheaper to maintain. And with that understanding, you can improve the design, reduce the cost, and ultimately improve the performance as well. So having that capability in-house is really useful. And we definitely support the idea of apprenticeships, and we'd be keen to team up with any organisation that wants to partner with us on an apprenticeship scheme. And of course, any financial support for that would also be very welcome. So yesterday I consulted with the younger members of our team and said, hey, what is it about Pembrokeshire that you like, and where are the challenges with getting young professionals to work and live in Pembrokeshire? And it is a bit of a challenge. We have struggled to retain and attract young professionals, and primarily they cite the fact that it's difficult to build a social network. Yes, it's a beautiful environment, lots of great outdoor activities, but there's a strong focus on tourism, and that means it's very seasonal. And they complain about the long, quiet winters, the lack of decent kind of social venues to go to, and the remoteness is also an issue. So I think, if we could get the railway all the way from working all the way to Pembrokeshire, and as efficient and high speed as it is elsewhere in the country, so that you could get on the train in Bristol or London and get to Pembrokeshire without too many stops and within a few hours, then that would definitely be an advantage, and it would help. It would help with bringing in young professionals to the area. Ultimately, once you achieve a certain critical mass of young professionals, then it would this problem would eventually go away, because there is all of the natural landscape, the beaches, and all the outdoor pursuits make it a great place to live. But we need to try and get more tech companies in, and we need to work on some of those points, I think, to enable that. That is all I have. So I've no doubt there'll be an opportunity to take questions later on.
Thank you very much for that, Dave. As you mentioned, questions there. If anybody has any questions, please field them into the Q&A, and we'll address them at the end for some discussion. We're going to move on to some supply chain companies now. Just a reminder to our panelists, if we can try and keep to the 10-minute time limit if possible. We are running a little bit behind. Hopefully we can make that up as we get to the discussion. So up next, we have Charlotte Wood from Mainstay Marine, who are the fabricators who are assisting with the Bombora device that Dave mentioned there. You able to stop sharing your screen, Dave? Charlotte's there, thank you.
Can you see that?
It's still loading. We've got it, we've got it.
Okay. Just take you off. Okay, is it good afternoon now? I can't remember the time. Is it good morning or good afternoon? It's still good morning. Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, as Jay said, my name is Charlotte Wood, and I'm the Business Development and Marketing Manager at Mainstay Marine Solutions, based in South West Wales. I'll start the presentation today by telling you a bit about who we are and what we do, and our involvement in the marine renewables industry to date. And then, in keeping with this morning's topic of skills, we'll go on to list the 3 main challenges we currently face and the mitigation strategies we have in place to alleviate them. And finally, round up by examining how we as an industry group may take a collaborative approach to overcome these together to future-proof the industry going forward. So to introduce Mainstay, at the top right of the screen, you will see our 4.6 hectare site on the Milford Haven Waterway next to the ferry terminal in Pembroke Dock. Our core management team have been designing, building and servicing commercial vessels here for 35 years. We have around 65 core members of staff, inclusive of naval architects, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, welders, fabricators and painters. Our facilities include a wet basin for 3 vessels. We have 2 covered slipways with 650 ton capability, and a ro-ro slipway which can accommodate our 160 ton hoist. But in 2014, we diversified into the marine renewable energy sector. The first device we built was the 400 kilowatt, 200 ton tidal energy device for TEL called Delta Stream. This was the first marine project to be fully developed in Wales, and we look forward to seeing how this device is weathered with the support of the Tiger Energiser project imminently. The second device we built was the Ocean Wave Rower on behalf of the developer Wavetricity. In very simplistic terms, the device has large extendable arms either side of the vessel, move up and down on the waves to generate power. The third project we secured was the build of the mainframe and other additional components for the 75-metre long M-Wave wave energy device from Bombora, as Dave has already talked about. The device will be launched from our slipway in the next few months for testing, so please do make sure you follow these really exciting developments, and it's great to be working with such a talented team. The fourth device we built was a third-scale wave energy converter for Amog Consulting, an Australian firm. Simple in design, the device extracts energy from the motion of its pendulum structure. And just last week, Mainstay secured its fifth renewable energy project for the refit and fabrication of the crossbeam for QED Naval's sub-hub device. The steel is on order, and we look forward to working with the team on this innovative design. So why are Mainstay winning these projects? Well, we believe it's due to a culmination of reasons, including our location in the fast becoming marine energy hub that is Pembroke Dock and its close proximity to test sites, our facilities, our waterside access and our investment in the boat lift have shown to be instrumental for these prototype deployments. And finally, our core competencies and marine know-how, which appears to set us apart from the rest. But none of this would be possible without our people. It is vitally important that we have a pool of quality, highly skilled labour availability in the area in order to allow us to develop a business for the future. However, like many other firms in the area, this continues to be a challenge. The first main challenge for us is that we periodically find ourselves competing with the petrochemical industry. Whilst being situated in energy port has mostly benefited us, as there is generally abundance of skilled labour locally, this is not always the case during peak shutdown periods, where skill sets like welding are absorbed by the refineries completely. We've generally found that people with financial responsibilities and with young and older dependents see the value of seeking longer term secure employment with us. But many younger people can chase the blue book or quick money per se, and we simply cannot compete. I feel one of the ways we could overcome this issue is to sell the story and highlight those more intangible benefits of working on the green side instead, which I will later talk about. Our second challenge is around the need to plan for the future in regards to commercial utility scale developments and their respective O&M requirements. At present, as you are only too aware, there is still real disparity in the design and makeup of each marine energy device. And whilst this is of course expected in industry in its reasonably embryonic stage, it does make it challenging for us as the supply chain to ascertain which skill set we should be concentrating our efforts on. For example, where one device may require substantial electrical and mechanical involvement, others may require very little. In addition, companies like ourselves are not always in a position to invest large quantities of time and money on upskilling and recruitment in certain vocations in order for us to enable us to meet future demand, if there's a lack of certainty on where developers envisage the devices will be built. Also, when we get to a commercial farm stage, several of these devices will be required in quick succession. At present, the building of prototype devices has suited Mainstay well, as we are well versed at building one-off bespoke workboats, and thus this design to build model just comes second nature to us. However, moving to a more factory production-like operation would be a whole new way of working for us. And whilst I'm sure we would rise to the challenge, this would require a major cultural shift in working and our project management processes, which would not happen overnight. At this stage, all we can really do is keep abreast of the developments as much as we can, develop close working relationships with each of our clients, and attendance at these sort of stakeholder group meetings is paramount to gaining this intel as soon as possible. The third skill challenge we face is probably the most problematic so far. Key to the stability and growth of Mainstay and the sector as a whole is skills availability within the area. Unfortunately, like Dave, we've always found it difficult to attract the likes of electrical and mechanical engineers and experienced project managers, both within the local area, as well as those living further afield who would need to relocate to the area. As with many rural localities, Pembrokeshire has for many years endured what is crudely known as brain drain, a vast amount of young, talented individuals who leave the county to go to university, only to never return due to the perception they are limited opportunities available to them here. To try to overcome this, Mainstay has made a commitment to invest in the education of its young people through the establishment of its education programme. Our aim is to help educate our young people in the wonderful world of marine engineering by engaging in activities such as school site visits, facilitating female-only STEM workshops, offering work experience placements and giving presentations at enterprise fairs and open days, like the one that Hayley spoke about earlier. We have also made a commitment to retain 10% of our workforce as apprentices, and will soon be running a bursary scheme for industry-related undergraduates. We hope that by participating in these activities, we will pave the way for the next generation of marine engineers right here at Mainstay. So to sum up, we have 3 main skill challenges: periodically competing with the petrochemical industry, difficulty in planning for longer term demands, difficulty in attracting high caliber engineers. But in terms of attracting the right people to their area, I believe we as an industry can work collectively to alleviate this issue by significantly ramping up our marine energy education, not only with the young people, but the general public as well. We need a major sector-wide PR push to sell the story, the reliable, green, clean energy story, the wide spectrum of employment opportunity story, and in turn, the economic development of coastal rural community story. We need to jump on the politicians' bandwagons of seeing renewable energy as a potential COVID recovery sector. We need to tap into the curriculum and support the education of those increasingly aware, global warming conscious young people. And most of all, we need to shout about who we are as a sector, what we have done, and where we are going. To conclude, Mainstay will continue to strive to position itself as Wales' leading marine energy fabricators, as we see real value in being part of this industry, as it will play a major part in the future growth of the business. Not only can this industry contribute greatly to providing us with green, clean energy solutions for the future, but it will be a key enabler of quality employment for future generations to come. However, for the sector to succeed, it requires a multitude of highly skilled labour availability. We need to address these challenges collaboratively so we are able to see this industry strive in the way that it deserves to. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that, Charlotte. I can tell you've spent a long time thinking about these issues. And yes, us at Marine Energy Wales definitely look forward to working with you to address some of these challenges in the future. So we have our next supply chain presentation coming up now. So we have Jared Peters from Green Rebel Marine. Are you with us, Jared? Okay, we'll come back to Jared then, if he's available after our next presentation. So next we'll hand over to Jane Lewis from the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership, and she's going to talk a bit more about what's being done about skills and how we provision the needs of the industry. Over to you, Jane. You're on mute. I think still on mute, Jane. Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your presentation just fine. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm Jane. I manage the Regional Learning Skills Partnership for South West and Mid Wales, and I'm going to talk to you today about what we do in the Skills Partnership and how we can help the sector perhaps move forward. So we're one of 3 skills partnerships in Wales, and annually, under normal circumstances, we produce an annual skills plan which recommends to Welsh Government how to allocate their funding to further education and work-based learning for specific skills and demands that are rising in our region. And how we get that information is we engage with employers and industry partners across the whole of our region through our cluster groups and through surveys that we undertake and events that we hold throughout the year to understand what the priorities are and what the new skills issues are coming out from each of the employer areas. We also talk about the educational offer that's offered in our region and try and encourage them to look at what opportunities there are coming in the development stages in our region, but also how we can change what's being delivered to meet the employer needs. However, through the pandemic, we've been engaging with employers to understand the support that they need to recover from the needs of the pandemic and how things have changed. And this has been fed up to the Welsh Government through bi-monthly reports. And it's quite interesting what I've heard today about some of the key challenges and especially some of the recovery plans that your industry have proposed that we should be putting in front of the Welsh Government. And that is something that's so important, that we embrace all of those comments and needs in our monthly and bi-monthly reports to Welsh Government. And finally, we are leading on the City Deal Skills and Talent programme, which is a £30 million programme to support the 8 key projects that make up the City Deal, but hopefully other projects that will come out of the City Deal during its lifetime. So if we look at the sector, we've got nearly 32,000 people employed in our region in the sector. It's very important for Wales and for the region. We generate in the sector 1.7 billion for the region, and we are projected to marginally contract over the next 5 years. The top jobs in the workforce, we've heard of all of these today, but here are some just figures around some of those top jobs that you can see on the screen. And, these are really, really important jobs, and that's been emphasised very much today in the presentations that we've already heard. The next slide is just looking at some of the job postings, and we use this information in the plans and proposals we put to Welsh Government, and particularly now in light of the pandemic. So if we look at job postings in this sector over the last 3 months, there were 3,042 unique postings that were made in this time period. So every unique job was on average posted 7 times, suggesting that companies from this sector are working harder to recruit in comparison with companies from other sectors. So that really emphasises what has already been said this morning. And the top jobs in demand, you can see the list there. And the 2 columns show obviously the number of unique postings during the period and what the occupations are. So it's quite interesting what's on offer, but the postings are there and they're continually there, so you are having the difficulty in recruitment. And this is one of the areas that we're trying to look at as far as the City Deal projects are concerned, is how we can target some of these specific areas and look to upskilling existing workforces, and also trying to work with the colleges, the schools, and obviously your partner organisations as to how we can get that message out to the young people, not just in Pembrokeshire and the surrounding counties, but also across other parts of Wales and further afield into England, that Pembrokeshire and West Wales are a fantastic place to live and work, and there are opportunities being created in the region. The top hard skills for recruitment, again, you won't be shocked at any of this because you've talked about these today. But these are the skills that you're looking for, and the skills that you obviously can't attract sometimes. But there's no lack of fluctuation between those. If you look at the one on the left hand side is November 2019 to January 2020, and then the right hand side. So there's not much fluctuation there. The only one that we've looked at really is the CAD. The CAD doesn't seem to be as important now as it was in November 2019, but that could be some of the issues that we've had with the specific companies who've come back to us. So we'd welcome any comments that you've got from these skills that we've identified now, because if there are things there that are missing, we need to know that, because that's the area that we'll be focusing on in the reports. And I just wanted to just mention just at the end here that we are constantly gathering information for our reports, and we did a specific report for the tidal lagoon in Swansea a few years ago, looking at specific skills that we identified as being required, and many of those skills I've highlighted in the presentation there now. But we want to make sure that we've got the right information for now and for the next 10-15 years, because that's what's going to influence how we allocate funding in the future through the colleges, through the apprenticeship provision, but also through the City Deal programme, because that's all about looking at these new skills that are needed in the region to support industries across the emerging themes for the City Deal, of which energy is one of the major sectors that we're highlighting. So I'd be pleased to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that higher level overview, Jane. We're going to try and go back to Jared now, if you're with us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks, Jared. Over to you when you're ready.
Yeah, so can you guys see my screen now?
Not yet.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's loading now. There we have it.
Right, great. Yeah, so as Jay said, I'm Jared. I'm here at Green Rebel Marine over in Cork in Ireland. And I'm just going to talk briefly today about some of the skills that we look for while we're collecting data offshore with a focus for offshore renewable energy. So as everyone else sort of did, I'll start out with a bit of background information on our own company. Just really briefly, as I said, we're an Irish company. We're really the only company in Ireland who are focusing on renewable energy from a service provider point of view. And we're really trying to do more than just the survey work, but because of the state of the industry here in Ireland, that's a good place for us to start. We pride ourselves in being technologically advanced, and we also provide innovative ways of sharing our data with our clients. I won't get into any of that today, but I'm in charge of the survey division, and that includes hydrography, geophysics, geotechnics. We also do quite a bit of aerial survey. We've got our own plane and UAVs. And of course, we do analyses on the data we collect and a lot of consulting work as well. So keeping all that in mind, I just want to sort of shift gears into the skills for offshore research. And when I was trying to come up with ways to present these, the sort of different categories that I could come up with to kind of organize a talk like this, I had a lot of sort of failed attempts to categorize these, and I just want to actually share what was troublesome about this, because maybe my my pain in this is actually quite revealing as to how important a lot of different aspects are to what makes you a skillful geophysicist or geotechnical engineer or so forth. So one way to categorize these skills is by the survey activity, hydrography, geophysics, etc. But I don't like to do that, because when you're offshore and you're on a data campaign, you often have to wear several hats and help out the hydrographers, even if you're a geophysicist, and vice versa. So I didn't want to have a whole talk designed on those things. Likewise, the place in the data workflow, planning, acquisition, processing, maybe would give a picture that was overly simplistic, so I didn't want to talk about that. And when I started to try and categorize things by the types of sensors and software we use, I quickly realized that this would probably be a bit too complicated for many people and a bit boring for other people. And so it's important, and it's an obvious route to the talk, but it's not a great presentation. So I came up with a really basic breakdown of what we try and do, which is just collecting data and then bringing it home. And this has three parts. You facilitate the data collection, you interface between the sensors and the computers and between sensors and other sensors, and you also interact with the data itself. And these things, they require sets of skills, as I've listed here in these bullet points. And in particular, the facilitating actual data collection is quite a specialist skill set. And really, that's one of the trickier things. So I'm just going to talk about these three things and then get into a bit more theory on renewable energy versus other industries. So when you're facilitating data collection, you're doing things like flying the sensors, deploying, recovering the sensors. So this is actually towing sonars and radars and everything else, beacons and USBLs and all the things we have to do to accurately and safely tow some of our equipment that's not hull mounted behind the vessel. And doing all this, you're basically a scientist who has to do deck work. So you have to realize the importance of local conditions, communication with your co-workers. It can be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing or if you don't know how to use your personal protective equipment, etc. So the essential skills are practical and then technical. You have to know how to handle this equipment. You have to know how to hook it up properly. You have to know how to interface it to different programs. And a lot of it's interpersonal. You have to build trust amongst your team. You have to take responsibility for your actions, and communication is key. Of course, then you have to interface with the sensors. And by this, I mean calibrating, setting up, but also helping sensors talk to other sensors. Obviously, the echo sounders don't know where they are, so it's critical that you have correctly interfaced GNSS data coming in. And here, so on the right, I've got a really generic chart of SVP data. So that's the sound velocity profile, and you have to use that. You have to be able to recognize that the multi-beam data needs calibrated because the sound travels differently through the water column with different with changes in temperature, salinity, pressure. So you have to take measurements and then teach the sensors that you're using with those measurements how to accurately collect data, just for example. So obviously practical skills are needed, but also more technical skills. You need to be able to use the software and make sure they're interfaced correctly. And finally, you have to interact with the data. This is because the survey vessels aren't just collecting data, but they're trying to deliver it in the most usable way possible so that we can finish processing onshore or just give it to our clients directly if it's been processed enough offshore. So there are mobile labs working with the data to clean it, identify outliers, and this requires a lot of dedication. It requires deep understanding of the software and the data, and a lot of concentration so that you're not distracted by things like Skellig Michael while you're sailing around offshore. So what we're talking about from our needs point of view, from the programs that we've seen today, like with some of the training programs, which are excellent, we need people who can combine all these things to bring safely collected data at a high quality standard back to shore. So the technical and practical things, they stem from education to start with. The practical and personal things require, I think the biggest thing is really respect. Knowing, not just respect of your teammates while you're offshore, but also respect of the elements and the job and the quality that's needed. You really have to hold a lot of things in high regard to be successful offshore. And to build the practical knowledge, you need to really be diligent and work hard for a long time which of course means experience, which is the underlying thing here. So what we look for in surveyors are people who ideally have experience with offshore wind, but that's not always the case, right? This is a fairly new industry. So like everyone else, we're trying to adapt. And I just want to show what some of the differences are. One of the hardships in adapting from other industries like oil and gas. This is a typical sort of generic cross-section that you might see in a petroleum geology classroom, where you're looking at deep structural geology. You're looking for traps, hydrocarbon traps, and faults, and I mean, it's the important thing here is the scale, right? If you notice on the bottom of the screen there, the scale bar is 100 kilometers. So we're talking about thousands and thousands of meters here. And for offshore renewables, we're really only interested in quaternary geology, tens of meters at the surface. So things like sedimentology, young sedimentology, process sedimentology, glaciology, you know, ocean sea level transgression, these things take a much more central role in our data collection and interpretation activities. So if you think about it from the point of view of putting wind farms offshore, right away, geomorphology, sediment types, these things are things that other industries trying to build things offshore wouldn't really care about, certainly not as much, because the scales are just off altogether. So what this means is there's a lot more room for people with quaternary background, quaternary geologists, to sort of take up the reins and apply their skills as technicians offshore. And luckily, that's something that we have a lot of here in Ireland. There's a lot of universities who really excel in this. Ireland has a lot of beautiful glaciated terrain, which kind of inspires that kind of an educational pursuit in a lot of people. So that's one of the things we're trying to do here at Green Rebel Marine is combine the existing skill set from the surveyors who've been out there doing this for a long time, probably with oil and gas, and more young geologists, like the not young in their own age, but young geology, like quaternary versus tertiary. Because if they can learn the skills needed to discover the data in these shallower environments, then that's really what we need for offshore wind development, offshore renewables in general. And that's where I'm going to leave us. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for that, Jared. Great to have another supply chain perspective on there to add to all of the other panelists we've had today. So we've got a final speaker coming up now, and then we'll hopefully have some time for some questions. So if any questions have come to you, please put it into the Q&A and we'll hopefully address them after our final speaker, which is Jen Fox from Aquatera. She's going to be talking to us a little bit about the MATES project, which was a project to study skills gaps in the marine renewable sphere. Over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Jay. Are you seeing that slide?
Yep.
Fantastic, good start. Okay, I'll try and pick up some time so we do have some time for questions at the end. So yeah, as Jay said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the MATES project, which was a project designed specifically to look at skills gaps and ways to address skills gaps in both the offshore renewable energy sector and also the shipbuilding sector. So I'll just start by introducing myself. I'll tell you a little bit about the project itself as well, and then I'll go into some of how we've collected data on this topic, some of the results of that data collection, and then I wanted to specifically look at one element of our data collection called the Delphi methodology, and then I'll finish up just by explaining, now that we've collected a lot of data on skills gaps and how to address those skills gaps, what we're doing about it in the final stage of the MATES project. So hopefully some of you are familiar with Aquatera. We are an environmental consultancy based in Orkney in Scotland, and we've been working in the marine energy sector for about the last 10 years or so. But as you can see, I'm just showing this map briefly to show, you know, the vast opportunities that we've had over the last few years to take the experience that we've learned in marine energy in the environmental services that we provide and take those around the world. And there really is a vast opportunity for lessons learned here in Scotland and in the UK and indeed in Ireland as well, to be taken around the world and to share that learning and share the skills that we've gained over that time. So this is the MATES project as a whole. I won't go into all of the details on this slide, but I just wanted to explain a little bit about the background to the project. So as I said, the aim of the project is to examine the skills gaps in both offshore renewables and shipbuilding across Europe and look to the future as to how we are addressing those skills gaps currently and what more could we be doing. So there's essentially two key parts to the project. The first is that gap analysis, and the second part is the implementation and development of key ways to address those gaps. So that's the big box here in the center, work package 4, pilot experiences. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. And we're in the final year of this 4-year project. It'll end at the end of 2021. And what we're building towards is to have a long-term industry-led action plan for skills gaps in these two sectors for Europe. So what we did in the first 2 years of the MATES project, we had a number of different ways of gathering data from key experts, both from industry. There was a heavy focus on industry, but also from research and education to gather information on where those skills gaps are and where what kind of trainings are offered at the moment and how we could be addressing these skills gaps. So I've just put some of the key stats down here to kind of give you an idea of some of the work that we were doing to gather this information. So you can see at the top here, literature review, an analysis of job vacancies and the kind of skills that were being asked for, a number of workshops. So we managed to get a total of around 330 participants across Europe in these workshops. Thematic expert groups were formed that really engaged experts across Europe in a specific way and asked them to work with us on a continuous basis. So we were getting that continual feeding in from experts into everything that we were doing. The Delphi questionnaire, I'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute, and then some more targeted, kind of more detailed engagement and consultation with key people across Europe, so questionnaire, interviews, and focus group discussions. And I should have said right at the top, I'm glad that I'm coming in last in the running in the webinar today, because I think all of the speakers before me have kind of, you know, talked a lot about where there are skills gaps, and I think there seems to be a lot of consensus on where those kind of key gaps are and what are some of the things that we can be doing to address that. So hopefully what I'm going to talk about today will bring some of that together and kind of summarize it, because I think there is some good consensus here. So I should also say that in all of that work that we've done, there is a lot of information, a lot of detail, a lot of nuance in the way that we've collected data and analysed data. I'm going to present just the headlines here. So if you are interested, please drop me a note and I'd be happy to share more information, or it's all on the MATES website anyway. So I've split this into hard skills and soft skills, as some speakers have already spoken about previously. These are the hard skills, the kind of key results that we found in all of the stakeholder engagement and consultation that we did as being the key skills gaps for offshore renewables. So project management, I think Dave was talking about that a bit earlier, and certainly some other speakers have mentioned quite a few of these things, engineering skills being a really, really key one as well. Digital skills, you know, that kind of data handling and data analysis, as well as offshore specific skills, so working at heights and those types of things. So again, I think, you know, this isn't brand new information. Clearly there's a consensus in some of the stuff that we've all been talking about today, and I think we're just working to bring that all together and to show that consensus, and then to move on from that and show what we can do to address that. So soft skills was a really important part of what we were doing in our work. That came up time and time again, and again, some of the speakers have spoken about that today. These kind of things that are less tangible, they're less easy to describe. You know, when you think about the creative thinking, critical thinking, communication and collaboration, and all of that kind of feeds into the project management stuff, which came out top of the hard skills side of things. And so that was a really important element of the work that we were doing as well. So this next graph shows some of the appropriate methods for developing those hard and soft skills. So when we start looking into the detail of how would be best to address some of these gaps. And there was a number of different ways that we discussed, you know, the kind of more traditional educational stuff in terms of master's programs or undergraduate programs or vocational education training programs. And I think you can clearly see in this graph, the top three rows here are in-house training, on-the-job training, and professionally accredited training courses or programs. We're coming out for both hard and soft skills as being more appropriate ways that employees can develop those skills. And I think what we're seeing there is that the traditional educational programs, you know, masters and undergraduate, they do their job and they're needed, and they have a very important role in training. But the key thing that we're missing at the moment, it seems like, is that experience, you know, and people have mentioned it previously, that on-the-job training, that learning as you go, and that being supported through your employer in terms of professionally accredited programs and those kinds of things are really, really key here. And that was obvious when we looked at the results of our work. So I did just want to focus in, that was the kind of general stuff on where we're at today, you know, the snapshot on the key skills gaps as of now. And the Delphi process we used to look into the future. And we particularly focused on this term paradigm shifters, which we defined as key technologies that will have a disruptive impact in the years up to 2050, for which the maritime industry is not prepared enough, either in terms of technical capabilities or technological services and current research availability. So it's really those kind of new technologies or new products and services that are going to have a disruptive impact on the industry and that might require different skills, and we need to be prepared for that. So we gathered a group of experts and collected data from them on the effect of these paradigm shifters on current and future jobs, the requirements of emerging jobs, the time frame of those changes, and critical technologies required for the evolution of the paradigm. So we were really asking these experts to look into the future and use their expertise and their experience to predict how these kind of paradigm shifters would change things in terms of occupational profiles and the skills required within those jobs. So the process itself is quite an interesting one. I've explained how we defined the problem or the question. We selected an appropriate panel of experts. We prepared a questionnaire that focused in on those key aspects for the experts. And then the process of Delphi is to analyze the response and deduce whether a consensus has been reached or not. And if a consensus has been reached, that's the end of the process. If the consensus has not been reached, it goes back through a second layer of questions to the panel of experts. It might be that additional information is required by the experts in order to be able to better answer the questions, or that they, you know, have a discussion as a panel of experts and are given the opportunity to respond to the questionnaire. And so ultimately the goal is to come to some kind of consensus with a panel of experts on that key problem or question. And so I'll just focus on the right-hand box here, the offshore renewable energy. These are the key paradigm shifters that we looked at within this process. So things like advanced robotics, 3D printing, energy storage, big data, and smart grid sensors. There's a lot of information on this slide, so I won't go through everything, but this is just a snapshot of some of the results of that Delphi questionnaire. So along the y-axis from bottom to top, you're seeing the most agreement on those paradigm shifters becoming mainstream down to least agreement. And these arrows here are showing the agreement on the impact of jobs, color coded so that the red one that you're seeing here is the highest agreement and blue is the lowest. And then you're also seeing an overview of the timeline. So what is the predicted timeline for these paradigm shifters to become mainstream, and what how big the impact will be on jobs. So smart grid and smart sensors coming in on top there. And what we've also did as part of that process was to look at where there would be new emerging occupations and what kind of training would be recommended as part of those new and emerging occupations, to make sure that people have the right kind of training and skills to be able to take up these occupations when needed. So you can see, and it kind of corresponds well with the things I was describing previously about that lifelong learning, that on-the-job training. So things like webinars, on-the-job training, blended apprenticeships, you know, some of these things have been mentioned previously. So I think I'll leave it there. I know there's a lot of information there, but I just wanted to end on the next stage. So now that we've gone through all of that data collection and data analysis and been able to have a lot of information about skills gaps and potential ways to address those skills gaps, the second half of the MATES project has been all about developing, as we call them, pilot actions. So innovative ways of addressing those skills gaps and actually having the opportunity to implement those pilot actions and gather feedback from end users to see how useful are they and are there ways that we can improve them. So we're in that stage of the project just now. We as Aquatera are responsible for just one of those pilot actions, and that is what you're seeing on your screens just now. It's a crash course in offshore renewable energy, a very short 3-day long course which provides an introduction to all of the fundamental aspects of the offshore renewable energy sector. And the idea is that it's open to people who haven't worked in that sector previously, but maybe have worked in a similar or parallel sector. You know, it might be oil and gas or fisheries or aquaculture, and have an interest in moving into this sector, but maybe don't know where to start. And so what this course does is provides them that introductory information and that starting point into those key fundamental aspects of the offshore renewable energy industry. So I will end there. Thank you all very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that, Jen. We'll also provide a link to the report in the communications after the webinar so that people can check that out in more detail should they wish. So yeah, thank you to all of our panelists. We have run a little bit behind on time, but hopefully you're all okay to stay and answer some questions. So a theme that kind of popped out for me that I'd like to know a little bit more about is collaboration. We had a lot of people there mention collaboration. How do we go about collaborating to address some of these issues? Who do we collaborate with? Is there anybody who'd like to come in and perhaps talk a little bit more about that? Or I'll pick somebody. Charlotte, you mentioned collaboration quite a lot in your presentation.
Yeah, no problem, Jay. I think one of the projects that that Hayley spoke about was the fact that, you know, there's Mainstay, the Port Authority, the college, Bombora, basically the same sort of spectrum of people who are here today, actually coming together and organising certain events to educate young people on the variety of the spectrum activities that are available to them. Would be a really good idea. And one of the points that I made in my presentation was that it's not just to the young people, it's actually to the general public as well. I don't know if any of the rest of you find this, but if you speak to someone outside of the industry, outside of your job place, they don't necessarily know what's going on in the marine energy industry from a public's perspective. So I think a big PR push needs to go ahead now, and I'm not sure who needs to kind of head that, I feel like, but we as an industry group can definitely, you know, put our heads together and have a clear understanding of the key points, what's going to really hit home with most people. And we talked about the climate change story, but also how it's going to, you know, how it's going to promote employment opportunities in what are rural localities, you know, regionally low-income households can be involved with this in the future. So we need to really get together and make sure that we have a collaborative voice, that we target the right people, and generally spread the word on what we're doing, would be my perspective on that.
Anybody else like to come in on that?
Hi Jay, I can. Hello. So obviously I mentioned collaboration or collaborating to compete in my presentation, and I guess 2 points. So I mentioned the Offshore Energy Alliance, which is a sort of supply chain and skills cluster that we've established, and I think throughout developing that cluster from an early stage, it became really apparent that of course you want healthy competition between different regions and different technologies, etc., but actually there is a lot to be gained by that collaboration piece. So different industries coming together where it makes sense. For one example in relating to fixed offshore wind was with the maritime sector and how we can work more closely with vessels that are required for O&M or construction or other aspects. And I also think geographically, we've sort of, the cluster we've set up was more focused around North Wales, but we spread that into the northwest of England, and increasingly we're spreading that around Wales itself and into the Celtic Sea cluster as well, and really up for that. And I think when it comes to promoting skills and the opportunities for young people, I think it's really important that they see collaboration across the sectors and how they can work together, and then that spreads their knowledge of what other opportunities, touching on my point around transferable skills as well, and how those peaks and troughs are evened out. I think that's really important.
Can I come in there, Jane?
Yeah.
As a college, we have hundreds and hundreds of apprentices right across South West Wales, and we are very keen to work specifically for the sector, and that could be in the shape of a shared apprenticeship scheme, because presently there are not enough jobs out there for us to sort of sell the sector widely, if you like, across the schools and to our own age group. But if there was a shared program whereby they jump on a basic electrical engineering or an engineering program, and then they work with the partners to pick up particular skills, then that is one way of them dipping their big toes into the sector, and a way to sort of drive positive PR as well. So, maybe there's some scope to create a shared apprenticeship.
Do you want to come in as well, Karen? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to support everything that's been said, really. And my personal feeling is that the industry has to be, central to all of this. And I think the challenge might be within education is that how do you keep the curriculum relevant in maybe a fast-moving industry? I'm just thinking there's always been an identified skills gap historically between the individuals coming through the traditional education system and what the industry need. And I think that the bridge there would be the industrial link, and to have investments from and drivers from an education, from an industrial perspective, and relating to the actual sheer costs of keeping IT and software and engineering relative. It's a big investment, and I suppose that may be a question to one of the education establishments, how to broach that.
I could potentially, it's a slightly different point, but we've, as I said in my presentation, we've actually targeted on some occasion female-only STEM workshop activities. It's really encouraging to see here, even on the panel alone, actually, that there is quite a mix of male to female. And with my other hat in the boat building industry, it's very different. It's predominantly male. So I don't know if it's something that we could really use as a marketing tool to kind of elevate women in technology, and use that part of it to get the conversation flowing. I don't know what people's perspective on that is, but the excitement that everyone feels about this industry and the commitment to it, I think will come across quite naturally as we start these discussions. So females that we kind of look to initially as this is obviously being biased, obviously, as a way into those communications, I guess.
Apologies, Jay, if I can just come in again and directly link to Karen's point. I completely agree about the industry role in this, and you know, coming from a developer and industry company, one example is that, you know, I mentioned our relationship with College Llandrillo, and we're actually helping to sort of shape, should we say, some of the course content or the areas of focus for a new engineering centre that they're hopefully going to get agreement to build. And I think, you know, it's yes, money and resources is always helpful and very much needed, and you know, things like donating component parts or whatever it is that students need to study, but I think often that verbal dialogue is also really important, just to shape, you know, what is current, what's coming up. We're saying yes, offshore wind is big and will continue to be big, but also don't forget about floating wind, don't forget about other technologies, and I think that's a really important conversation to future-proof what centres are teaching.
No.
Dave, do you have anything to come in with on the topic of collaboration?
Let me just turn the mute off. Yeah, I mean, we work closely with our supply chain, and you know, we're keen to see that they develop the skills needed to service our technology. And you know, we accept that, you know, we may invest in our people, but if they do end up moving on into our supply chain, then that's not a bad thing, because it ultimately helps to feed our supply chain with friendly faces, but also experience that we require. So building up the capacity of our supply chain is key, and we'll do that wherever we go. And collaborating with the local schools and colleges is also something that we actively support and will continue to do so. And already that's yielding results. So it's all good stuff.
And if I may, can I just on a final note, I think there are examples of best practice. You know, I'm originally from the defence industry, and they've made major investments in working collaboratively with industry and government as a lobbying group, and also as an active partner. And it's been shown that it actually makes a difference to the success of the company as well as. So there's now ways of measuring something that used to be viewed as good corporate citizenship and something maybe a little bit soft, in that there are active returns that can be measured with collaborative approach right across the industries, I think, but specifically in engineering disciplines, where again BA Systems actively work with and select young female engineers and bring through that reservoir of talent, which is a constant pipeline for them.
So I'm going to go to some of the questions that we have from our audience now. So Matt Knights has asked, with the introduction of more tech across multiple energy sectors, in the future, does the panel believe that the skills will be transferable into the new technology, or will there be significant investment required? Dave, do you have an input as a developer?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a number of different new technologies at the moment. A lot of our industrial control systems are quite large and bulky, and with the advent of drone technology and Arduino units and Raspberry Pis and that sort of stuff, we think that there are opportunities there for miniaturizing our kit and also bringing the cost down, because you know, there's a lot of open source software out there that we might be able to utilize. So when we go through our recruitment process, if any of our engineers happen to state an interest in that kind of technology, it always sparks an interest. The other thing is battery storage. Renewables will require some form of battery storage. It's going to become more of an issue as renewables become more dominant in our energy mix. And it's a fairly specialist skill set. There's lots of different technologies out there that are developing all the time. So we don't have a great strength in that area, but we are looking to bolster that part of our organisation. But it's not difficult. It's not easy, sorry, to find people with those skills. It's you know, they're in demand, and it's a new and developing industry.
Helen, do you have something to contribute to that as well? Perhaps RWE's wind experience can tap into the new tech aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that question is both, really. I think there's a lot of, you know, existing transferable skills that we can utilise, but without a doubt, you know, it requires more investment to train people up in the newer technologies as well. So I think if we can do both of those things and carry through the knowledge that, you know, is relevant from existing and current technologies right through to newer ones, as well as, you know, I think it was Charlotte earlier that mentioned, you know, this sort of getting the PR right about how we sell as an industry. And that's not just about firstly recruiting people in to get trained up and become skilled workers, but it's having the sort of education tools to train them up in the right way. So I think, you know, having both of those things would only create a really strong skills base for us.
Thank you. So we've had some other comments. Tony Lewis has said that they did not see diving as a possibility. It is, of course, an area where divers are needed within the marine renewable supply chain, and he's asking if there is a training centre in Wales for diving. Maybe you have an answer to that, Jane?
Yeah, there are a number of diving centres, but not specifically for your industry sector. But if that's an area, because that was an area we actually looked at for the tidal lagoon, because they'd identified the need for diving and specifically underwater welding. So it would require sort of 2 qualifications. But going back to the point that I made earlier, what we're trying to establish here is what all of these new skills that are going to be required. And I totally agree with the comments that we made about new technologies, because they are constantly developing, and it's not just the educating of the people who are going to take up the jobs, but obviously we need to keep educating the lecturers and teachers in the schools and the colleges and the universities as well, to keep up with the technology, so that they're fully aware of what your industry sector is requiring, not just now, but in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So we all need to keep up a pace there, not just keeping the potential workers in the industry. And that is something that we're trying to put into our business case for the skills and talent programme for the city deal, because this sector is going to be so important moving forward. We have to make sure that we've got the right amount of funding in there to make these skills available across all the areas of your sector needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So we have a question here about health and safety skills gaps specifically, and what Mike Cole would like to know if behavioural safety has been considered. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the aspect of health and safety covered in the MATES project, Jen?
Sure. Yeah, I think that when we talked about health and safety skills, we didn't specify or differentiate between different types of skills within that. Obviously, we were looking at skills from a kind of a broader level, and so we didn't get into detail. So behavioural skills were essentially incorporated within that, yeah.
We have a question from Murray Campbell asking, what is the most common shortfall in knowledge, skills and expertise that employers or managers find among the workforce and those entering the industry? What do they see as upcoming or current most needed skills for the future? So I know that most of our speakers kind of touched on that within their presentation, so maybe if we could have like a quick fire revisit around from each of our panelists as what they see as the most important skills. So starting with Charlotte, do you want to begin?
Yeah, electrical, mechanical, engineering would be our one. Yeah.
Dave, you're on mute there. You're on mute, Dave.
Oh, sorry about that.
Happens every webinar, it's fine.
Hate it when I get caught Yeah, I'll second that, Charlotte. You know, finding people that have that expertise. There's quite a lot of expertise around the kind of grid integration, but when it comes to rotating machinery and power conversion, battery storage, that is a really sought after skill, and it's hard to come by.
Helen?
Yeah, I would agree with that, but without wanting to reiterate the same point again, I would also add kind of, crossover skills, so people that have, some engineering knowledge, but also some policy knowledge, and also really good people skills. I think those people are quite rare and hard to come by, and add incredible value. If you can have that engineering knowledge in your head, even if you're not out there working on a turbine or something, and then you can go and speak to people, whether that's in schools or politicians or whoever it might be, and put that across, alongside it with a good amount of passion. I think that's a really good mix of skills.
Karen, do you have anything to contribute?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that some of the softer skills, like the communication skills and being able to work as a team, I think are crucial right across the board. But I think in engineering disciplines, it's an opportunity to sell and promote and be ambassadors. I think they're all very good points, and I support them all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to try and wrap up shortly, just because we have gone over on time. So I'm just going to pose one last question to each of our panelists, and that's to ask, if you had a magic wand or the power to instigate the changes, what would you policy or initiative would you put in place to address some of these skills gaps that we've seen today? So if we could go around everybody one at a time. Jane, let's start with you.
I'd say get that greater understanding of the exciting opportunities that the sector offers across, all levels that have been described today.
Jen?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said, Jane. I think ocean literacy in general is a big one that we focused on, that kind of basic understanding and building the enthusiasm and excitement. So I would agree with Jane, and I would just add to that, I think what we talked about earlier about investment being needed. I think it's so fantastic to hear about companies that are supporting their teams and, building in that kind of training and training programs to their professional development, but they need support. There's more support needed for industry in doing that and in developing their teams' professional skills.
Helen?
I think I would say sort of appreciating and raising more awareness of the technologies that are already in existence and really big and happening, and using that to generate excitement about other technologies, sort of as a marine industry as a whole, coming together to promote that and sort of sell that story. I think that would be really important.
Thank you. Dave?
We need a high-speed electric train running all the way to Pembroke Dock. I think that would make a huge difference to our ability to bring in and retain talent.
And to Anglesey as well, no doubt, just to make sure that everywhere.
And to Anglesey, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. My brother lives up there, so I'll be able to go and see him.
Karen?
I think I'd wave my magic wand over Westminster so that there would be greater value put generally into education, and also to appreciate that as an island, we really need to invest in our manufacturing and our people and our industry, and bring back and develop this new industry that we have a potential to be world leaders in. So not much to ask, I think.
Hayley? If you're there, or have you gone? Charlotte, I can see that you're here, so we'll defer to you.
Yeah, I don't really know how to explain this other than to be able to get into the mindsets of young people. I think there's been a perception for many years that actually Valero or the oil refineries are kind of holy grail of locations where you want to work in the future because of the high wages, etc. And to be able to change the mindsets, that all of a sudden can't wait to work for this developer who's developing a wave energy device, or I can't wait to work for the likes of Mainstay because they're building the device. So just to change that mindset from petrochemical industry is the way to go if you want those a career in that area in the future.
Hayley, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm with Charlotte. I've been around quite a few schools, and the only thing they see on our waterway is Valero, which tells me there's a lot of work to be done. So I think the more collaboration that goes on, the more school engagement there is, the better off we're all going to be.
Arwyn, you there? I did see you a moment ago.
Charlotte and Hayley stole my thunder a bit. What I was going to say was that the opportunity for all of our engineers to have work placement in a sort of a marine energy sector, you know, over the next 5 to 10 years, so they get a better appreciation of the industry and the opportunities available to them.
Okay, well, thank you all for your contribution there. We had some great presentations from all of our panelists. You're all obviously very passionate about this topic. I hope that this session today has been informative to everybody who's joined us. We'll have more events coming up in the future, so make sure you sign up to our mailing lists on the Selkie website, selkieproject.eu, and then you can receive all the information about what we've got coming up. We'll also have some post-event communications with everybody who's attended today, both with the video, the presentations, and some links to gather further information. Yeah, so thank you all very much for attending today. We really appreciate it. Feel free to get in touch, join the Selkie network to find out more. And yeah, hopefully this has been some real food for thought for a lot of people. And I know that myself, my colleagues at Marine Energy Wales and Menter, who are all heavily engaged in you know, pushing forward skills in marine energy, we look forward to working with you very much in the future. So yeah, take care everybody. Have a good afternoon, and goodbye.